genre.
In the world of Hollywood, movies get greenlit and redlit. They get remade and rebooted. But we are the Ideal. I'm Sam Gasch, and you are listening to Ideal Remake. Thank you for listening to Ideal Remake. We take movies that either have been, will be, or should be remade and talk about what the ideal version of that remake would be. This week I've invited a real sniper back as my guest, who knows that even if you use a silencer, that doesn't mean you're not a sniper. So Corsica, is Two for the Road a movie that has been, will be, or should be remade?
I think it definitely has not been, but I think it should be.
Okay.
I think it's just kind of a classic.
Yeah.
And could not necessarily be strictly loyal remake, but the concepts I think are ever present and definitely worth a remake of how that is viewed in modern relationships.
Yeah, they definitely have like versions of this.
Because, yeah, right.
But I also feel like in different versions of this, I think they would actually break up.
Yeah, right. The realistic.
Right.
Or, I mean, it's kind of tragic in that way.
Yeah.
Like, are we doing spoilers? I guess I have
whatever.
to. Yeah.
But Corsica, welcome back to Ideal Remake.
Thank you. Happy to be back.
For anyone who hasn't listened to Sherlock Jr. and How to Steal a Million, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I like old movies, if you can't tell, and silent film, but I do a little bit of acting and writing and production managing in Los Angeles, so big love for film and working in film, and hope to keep going with film, I guess.
Dope.
Yeah.
Cool. So how do you, what is your history with Two for the Road? Do you remember when you first saw it?
I think it was in college. Growing up, I actually didn't watch a ton of movies. I was a cartoon kid. And so it was in college that I started expanding on my own and exploring film. And I think it just came from the common love of Audrey Hepburn. And I would just kind of find people I loved and watch their filmography, just kind of watch all of the movies that they did. So I just went through her movies and watched all of them and really loved Two for the Road.
How does Two for the Road fall within kind of the oeuvre of Audrey Hepburn? Because it's obviously Breakfast at Tiffany's and whatever is going to be kind of top of the heap. Not even necessarily the best movie, but certainly the most recognizable one.
Sure, of course, yeah. I don't know many people that know this movie. Usually if someone brings it up, it's we fan out because it feels like not a lot of people are super familiar with it. I would even think How to Steal a Million is almost more, and that one not even many people know, but I would think that one's more popular than Two for the Road. But Stanley Donen and all the actors and stuff I feel like are very famous, or were at the time.
Oh, for sure.
So, and I don't know why it didn't last longer as a bigger thing.
The interesting thing for me is that How to Steal a Million, when you look up on IMDb Pro or whatever, I can see how much it cost. Which was How to Steal a Million was a $6 million movie, and then Two for the Road was
How to Steal a Million. I think they had who was it? Chanel, or they had a.
Yeah, they had the
big designer, Givenchy, I think. Yeah, just made all of her whole world. It was a money movie.
Absolutely, just very much showing off different amazing clothes. Yeah, so that was the year before.
Oh, okay.
So that's 66, and then Two for the Road is 67. That was only a $4 million movie. But IMDb has it listed as its worldwide gross as $17,808.
Oh, no. So it tanked.
It sure seems like it tanked.
Yeah.
And that's probably part of why a lot of people haven't seen it.
Yeah. It's not like her other movies. Like
it's not like other movies.
Yeah, when you watch it, it's you're not like, oh my god, this is a great movie. It just, I don't know, it just lingers, I feel like, with you, or moments are so specific.
It doesn't feel like a spectacle. It feels like a very... Because it's not.
Right.
Even How to Steal a Million...
And it's not really happy.
Everything...
It's not...
No, it's not at all.
It's not feel good.
It's... what was the... what's the Adam Driver movie that came out where he punches the wall?
Oh, the marriage story. Yeah, I haven't seen that, but I was going to bring that up as a kind of a remake-ish thing of
right. It's a story about a breakup.
Right.
And
of a married couple.
You watch this whole movie thinking it's going to be a story about a breakup, but then at the very end they're like, yeah, but I wouldn't want to be anywhere else, and it's like, What?
Yeah, or it's like, well, I've been with you, so
What a 60s attitude.
I know. Yeah, right. I mean, it's just an interesting attitude because I think 60s, but there's still a lot of, I'm sure, real couples that struggle
absolutely.
with that thought or just that concept
It's
in
like,
general.
yeah, well, the one time I had jury duty, the thing that I learned is that the number of people who will choose to be miserable in a quantifiable known way over stepping into the unknown to try to be happy is a large percentage.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's very interesting.
Yeah,
so,
I agree.
Not just in a story about a marriage, but about just that fear, like, in general. Yeah. Which she kind of does for a second when she has her little side rendezvous, and then she's like,
That as a concept in the movie was one of the parts that I found the most interesting. Like 20-30 minutes earlier, the Albert Finney character had randomly like gotten to a race with a woman on the road in France or Italy or wherever he was.
Yeah.
They hooked up and then they both went their own separate ways. So like he cheated and then it just was like not a thing.
Right.
And like, okay, so you're just a bad dude.
Yeah.
And then we get to Audrey Hepburn and they're all together at some vacation in France or Italy or wherever they are. And does this tell me? Yeah, France.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because they're speaking French the whole movie.
Yeah.
And randomly she gets introduced to this dude David, and then she kind of goes off with him after she and Mark have a kid, all this other thing, and she just gets drawn in by this other guy because her relationship with Mark was already starting to get a little bit rocky and she was feeling neglected, and she just goes off and has this relationship, and then Mark discovers it and she doesn't lie about it at all.
Yeah.
And then he's mad about it but like doesn't pitch a fit, which was like also I was like, okay, cool, but also I don't know how to feel about this.
Yeah. He's not super likable.
No.
But she's not doing great things either.
No.
At least she's, they're both kind of assholes and
Yeah.
not helping their own relationships, but he's an absolute hypocrite, of course.
Absolutely he is. But like, to his credit, he didn't like
right.
how dare.
Right. He just kind of sulked and
yeah. Like, there are a couple moments where I'm just like, nah, this isn't a good dude. But, like, fundamentally, like, he handled being cheated on very well. And I don't know why that slightly endeared me to him more.
Yeah.
But and then she just misses him and, like, doesn't enjoy the actual, like, relationship part of
the reality of
And then she's like, well, at least I can have conversations with the student. Goes back to Mark.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're jumping ahead. Corsica, why don't you tell us a little bit about what happens in this movie?
Oh, well... Yeah, it's the story of a marriage, and what is unique about it is it hops around in time, but it all centers around this one area in France that this couple constantly is returning to. So it's kind of seeing this relationship through this one area of through the numerous times that they've traveled in this one area of France. And I just thought that was cool how it was kind of a location was the constant. Mm-hmm. And then it was seeing them come back to this location at different stages of their marriage and, what was happening to them at that time.
Yeah, you described the movie to me as we're meeting this couple later into their relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I would presume in their 40s or 50s. Mm-hmm. And
at the beginning.
At the beginning.
Sure.
And then we then go back to how they first met
mm-hmm.
in the same sort of trip. And then we see a trip a little bit after that when they're newlyweds and they're with another couple kind of going on a trip. And then even after that, when they have a daughter, Caroline.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're like jumping back and forth between those like 4 different stories and timelines when
mm-hmm.
we kind of like experience them all. We're introduced to one, introduced to another, but then we kind of still go back and forth between all of them. Like their
mm-hmm.
whirlwind romance where they first meet, even their fun vacation with their awful vacation with the 2 friends that they then end up leaving.
Yeah.
And then where kind of things are clearly starting to fall apart,
mm-hmm.
which I don't know. It's fascinating and interesting just as an excuse to go hang out in France for a few weeks with your friends and make a movie.
I know.
A real, I'm really doing really badly with names today. A real Glass Onion kind of thing of like, well, it'd be fun to go make this movie on this private island in the Caribbean, or not the Caribbean, the Mediterranean or whatever.
Yeah. Definitely, and with like beautiful cars and landscapes and
so
architecture.
We'll get back to the marriage is rocky, and they're going off to like do the premiere of Mark's an architect, and so we're like going to the premiere of his like new fancy house. Was he building a house for this dude? What did he build?
Honestly, never really knew. I don't know, but he was working for this one guy all the time.
Who it seems like they met randomly.
They met kind of on one of the first trips.
Yeah.
And I think it was Audrey Hepburn's character that helped him connect with the guy.
Right.
And it just
she spoke French and he did not.
Yeah. I think it wasn't it at the hotel when their car broke down? The guy was like, Yeah. Helpful. Yeah.
And that was Maurice, who it turned out ended up hiring Mark to, I want to say, build his house.
Yeah. I think it was multiple projects, and that's why they were always going back to France. It was always because of his work. I think.
While he's like doing his architect thing and like constructing and laying out the plans and doing all this different stuff. So that's kind of like the quote unquote present. Tell me a little bit about what happens how they first meet. Like, what is the origin story? What's their meet cute?
Yeah, they were traveling together on a boat, but they were traveling separately. She was with like a group of, it was like a religious group.
It was
like
a choir.
A choir, right? But they all, it was like a women's group. And then he was on his own, I think, but he loses his passport and she finds it, and that becomes a recurring thing that she does for him throughout the story.
That's kind of their like running little bit of, she asks him if he remembers his passport. He desperately checks his pockets, realizes he doesn't have his passport, goes and checks his bags, and then she pulls it out of her bag and places it where he can see it.
Right.
It's very cute. I like it.
It is cute, yeah.
But they first meet on the boat where he drops his passport and she finds it, and he like can't be let into the country, and he's desperate. He's digging around. He's like, someone stole my passport, and then she just hands it to him.
Right, and she has it.
But then they go off on their own little adventures, and she's in a car with all of her choir mates that sort of gets run off the road by this tractor that Mark's the kind of hitchhiked a ride on the back of, and he's just kind of waving to them, and they get distracted by like, ooh, this handsome guy in the car.
Yeah, they intertwine continuously after that point. Yeah. And he kind of starts to flirt with one of the other girls.
Yeah, he flirts with Jackie.
Group. Yeah.
But then one of the girls ends up getting chickenpox. And that slowly spreads out to every single one of the other girls until the only ones left are Jackie and Mark. And then Audrey Hepburn walks out and she's like, no, I feel great. Yeah. This is, oh man, I slept so well.
She had it when she was little.
Yeah, I had it when I was little. And then Jackie scratches her back and it's like, oh no.
Yeah.
And Jackie and Mark had already made plans to like continue on the trip because it'd be a real shame to give up the rest of the trip while their friends are recuperating with chickenpox in the hospital for a week.
Yeah.
But then it's Audrey Hepburn going with Mark and just listening to him be a dude in his 20s who thinks he knows everything.
Yeah, so they start off as...
I wouldn't know anything about anyone monopolizing a conversation, but...
They start off not... It's not a meet cute necessarily. They start off as the opposites, and he's, all like...
He is like...
Yeah, and she's just, Audrey Hepburn.
Yeah. She's being like very adorable and very playful, and he's just kind of like being the kind of like
the grump,
the kind of arrogant grump, but he's still an attractive arrogant grump.
It's true, yeah.
And apparently that counts for a lot.
Well, it's like the charming grump of the time.
Yeah,
it feels like a dated way of how men used to be, kind of more like, yeah.
And so they continue on until eventually they like reach an impasse of they need to make it to the next town because they're like carrying their bags and figuring it out. And eventually they have to hitchhike, but hitchhiking is not working. And Mark goes, well, it's because there's two of us. They don't want to pick up two of us. So let's go our separate ways and then we'll see. And Audrey Hepburn's like, okay. So he walks down the road and Audrey Hepburn immediately gets into a car and takes off. And then he's stuck walking and he comes across a road sign or a train stop that's like kind of raising its arm up and down, and then Audrey Hepburn steps out from behind it. And he's like, I thought you were on your way. And she goes, I was, but then I told the driver that I was in love with you, so he kicked me out. And then they're like, oh, what a moment. And that's kind of the like the thing. And
Audrey Hepburn really initiated that whole
she really did.
relationship.
She found the passport. She went on the trip. She confessed love first. It was a very Audrey Hepburn driven relationship.
It's true.
And then we cut back to that a little bit of they go to the beach, they're like, this is our beach, and they spend a week together before they have to go their separate ways. But then they don't go their separate ways. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of like that's sprinkled in throughout the rest of the story. So then the next story is... and
it's funny because even during that, they're making jokes about marriage.
Yeah.
And kind of, making fun of it.
What is it that he says after they hook up? He says, a marriage is when a woman asks a man to take his clothes off because she needs to do the laundry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. Or they pass like a couple not talking or something and then they would just comment on being like, that's why.
How could they be having a meal and not talking? That's
yeah,
marriage.
That's right.
Waka waka.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, so we keep saying Audrey Hepburn. Her name is Joanna.
Yeah.
So it's Joanna and Mark Wallace.
I love that name. Yeah.
So then the next kind of venue, is that the right word?
Sure.
Why not? It sounds right.
Yeah.
Seems French.
Yeah.
They're on a shared vacation with Kathy and Howard and Ruthie. They'd referenced Kathy ahead of time because she is one of Mark's ex-girlfriends, someone he'd been in love with, but then she then started dating Howard, they got married, they had a kid, and now for some reason, now that Joanna and Mark are newlyweds, they're off on a vacation together. What happens on that vacation?
That child is just a nightmare.
A nightmare of their own creation.
Yeah. That definitely is more of the comedy part, but they just are on the road trip with them and grow more annoyed at the child and the whole dynamic and decide, then they start making fun of, because they're newlyweds and they're making fun of marriage. Now they're making fun of having kids.
Right.
But what did she say? She says, he's like, you still want a child? And she's like, I still want a child, just not that child.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Which is a great line.
Yeah.
He also says something along the lines of, before we were married, you said you didn't want children. Right. And she says, and before we were married, we didn't have children.
Right. Yeah.
And which is also a great line. There are a lot of really good lines in this movie. They just didn't fit the opening paragraph I needed. I'm like, that. I feel like there's a lot of setup. I'm like, I'll just go with kind of the whatever. But Howard is this I think he's a psychologist or a therapist or something, and he's kind of letting Ruthie just do whatever she wants, and he's like, well, it's because you're stifling her and this, that, the other thing. He's kind of commanding and demanding and just letting Ruthie get away with everything, and there's no discipline, and he's really just a lax father.
Yeah. He was annoying too, of course.
Well, what's crazy is, do you know who played him?
Mr. Finney.
I know, it was crazy.
I know.
So the actor's name...
I always forget. William Daniels.
Yes, right? William Daniels. And, so I didn't know that's who that was.
I saw him at the airport once.
That's so cool.
Sweetest man. Yeah.
He seems like the nicest guy.
Yeah.
And so, I'm watching this, and I finally go into the IMDb because I'm doing my recasting, and I get to William Daniels.
Yeah.
Why do I recognize... Oh, my God!
Yeah. I remember when I first watched it, because I just didn't expect... that because I'm there for Audrey Hepburn,
Yeah.
I know I'm just a college kid, not knowing anything, and then freaking out when I'm like, he's so young, and I'm like, oh my God,
doesn't even have a mustache. How are we supposed to recognize him?
I know,
crazy. And
it's very different. Well, I mean, I guess it's similar because he's almost still uppity, intelligent.
Yeah.
But in a different way in this film, more almost pretentious, annoying.
Yeah.
In this way too.
Very much a know-it-all.
Yeah.
But not a benevolent know-it-all.
Yeah. Or a correct know-it-all.
Right.
A lot of times.
Yeah. So basically, they're on this terrible vacation that they should. And then Kathy is just kind of being a nudge and a know-it-all and being like, so what's your relationship like? What's going on with you guys? How are you doing? Mark used to go out with me.
Yeah.
And but then he was number 2 to Howie. And it's okay, cool. I don't know why all of you are on a vacation together.
Yeah, I know.
This seems bad. And to the point where eventually, Howard is like, Joanna, I don't think Ruthie likes you very much. And it's really?
I know.
And it's maybe if you made more of an effort to be nice to her. And it's absolutely not. And then eventually... Ruthie's being obnoxious and Howard snaps at Joanna, not at his daughter, but at Joanna.
Right.
And Mark's like, fuck you, we're getting out of here. And they
Yeah.
jump out and like rent a car and go off and do other things, and they burn a car to the ground or some sort of thing happens. But like, yeah, it's just like a terrible, terrible vacation, and they just like, yeah, you know what? We did have plans. We're out of here.
Yeah. I think that's great. It's just, they were just like, hell no.
Yeah.
This is a bad vibe.
I respect the desire to know when to cut your losses.
Yeah.
So that's that trip. And then the third trip is they have Caroline. They have their own daughter.
Yeah.
So what's going on during that? That
is when you saw it more recently. So that remind me, that's when they're still traveling through and taking care of her, and that's when it's kind of starting to go on the rocks, and he's a little more work occupied, and she's kind of dealing with the kid, and they just get in more conflict with each other.
Throughout the movie prior, they'd been talking about money and finances and everything, and Mark finally has this opportunity in this very good job, and so it becomes kind of his sole focus.
Right.
And to the point where anything that gets in the way of that aggravates him and makes him obnoxious, to the point where Audrey Hepburn's trying to like be playful and flirty with her husband, and he's not having it. And he like, they're playing like table tennis or something, and they knock the ball away, and she gets it, and she's like being playful with the ball, and he's like shouting at her to give him the ball.
And they're at his boss's house.
house.
Yeah, they go and visit the house,
and then eventually he's so fed up with her that he picks her up and throws her in the pool. And it's like, hey, dope.
Yeah.
And then she pulls him in, and we get, ha ha ha, how flirty is this? But it feels abusive.
It's very cringy.
It's really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, and like up like 20 minutes prior, we'd cut to the future, and we'd seen that he'd gone off and had this affair, this like one night affair, and just gone on with his life, and no one ever knew about it. So it's like, I'm already never going to be on his side again.
Yeah.
But like, it's at that point when Audrey Hepburn's like kind of being abused and shouted at, that she meets David, this person who is an intellectual and talks to her and treats her not badly.
Yeah.
And she goes off with David, and she tells Mark that she's leaving him.
Right.
Because all he's doing is paying attention to work. Like, she goes to like, I don't remember what she does. She goes and has like dinner or lunch or something, and she steps out for some reason and asks him to watch Caroline. And Caroline just goes off, like, does a bunch of other stuff, and he doesn't pay attention to her at all. So he, like, completely neglects their daughter. And so Audrey Hepburn's, like, just gets drawn in by this other guy.
Yeah.
And then after they hook up for, I don't know, a few days, a week, or whatever, she realizes she's bored of him.
Right.
And then goes back to Mark.
Right.
And they're like, yeah, okay, we can do this again.
Yeah.
And then we cut to the future, and they are very much like, why are we even together? And that's just kind of the whole tenor of their relationship at that point. Of, even at the beginning of the movie, they're like, oh, Joanna's having a conversation on the phone, and she's like, oh, did you want to speak to Caroline? And he's like, who's Caroline? And she's like, your daughter.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, hi, sweetie.
Yeah.
Because at this point, I feel like Caroline's an adult when they're at that point.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah. And they're like in their 50s or something. And it's just like, well, I guess we're too old to go off and do something else. I guess we'll stay together. The end.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And then she pulls out his passport, and they're like, I can't. And then he calls her a bitch. She calls him a bastard. Ha 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 ha. End of movie.
I know. Yeah. That's like the humor throughout the whole thing, though. They make fun of marriage, but they are married. They hate the way other people raise children, but they're going to raise children. It's like hypocrisy is, and
I would call this a dark comedy.
Yeah. Because it's kind of like, we hate each other, but that's marriage.
Yeah.
And we knew it from the beginning, and we did it anyway.
That's what we signed up for.
Yeah. And
we saw the path.
Yeah. It's a confusing message, because it's like, is this... Oh, okay. So marriage sucks, but
it's all we
you
got.
love each other, so you have to do it.
Marriage sucks, but it's better than the alternative. Maybe.
Yeah.
Marriage sucks, but it's what you gotta do. I don't know. Hard to say.
Yeah.
Marriage sucks, but then you're in France.
Just go to France.
Yeah, just go to France.
Yeah.
It's easy.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the movie as it exists. What would you like to do with it?
Well, I think seeing it redone, I still like the message, but explored in a modern way, and not necessarily, maybe leaning more into the tragic or cynicism of it, and maybe having them part ways or having it just deal with that fear in a more direct way, kind of like what you do when you should and when you like you should get divorced but you don't.
Yeah.
And how the problems that causes.
I guess this feels like a movie that, unlike other movies that I've done here, where I kind of want to see what we want our end message to be and then work backwards from that. Because we talked about it a little bit, but this movie really plays around with the timeline and it jumps back and forth, and it is not a linear story really at all.
Yeah.
In a way that is interesting and fascinating, and just as a means of storytelling is really good. And I think you can't remake Two for the Road without having that, like, playing around with it's not Two for the Road without it.
Yeah. It has to be location based through time.
Yeah.
Kind of like road trip.
We didn't even talk about this, but like they have a couple moments where it's like, oh, they're on this road trip. Oh, we need to make sure Ruthie gets her dinner at the right time.
Yeah.
But we're here in, what was it? Pisa?
Yeah.
No, not Pisa. That some French town that's very cool and popular. And they're like, well, we got to go visit. And then they basically have that visit of this town on fast forward. It's really fun and
I know,
playful.
I love that, yeah.
And then the end of the movie, after kind of the we have our bitch bastard moment, we have them kind of like stepping through in the same location, and you watch the different shots blend together with them in different outfits at different points in time. And I don't know how they did that in 1967. And it's fascinating.
Yeah.
And that was also really cool. It's just kind of like a little treat for the eyes after the movie's over. That's a real tangent. What I was building towards was, what do you want the message to be? Like, is it this couple sucks that it's never too late to break up and try again? Or, hey, sometimes relationships don't work and they know it doesn't work, but sometimes miserable people just stick it out. Like, what would you like the message to be? Because what's our final moment?
No.
Do you want them to end up together, or do you want them to break up?
I don't know. It's tough because I never saw this as a message I should take for me, or like a message of teaching, which I know is what film is supposed to be. Like sometimes. Teaching like how to be better in the world and blah, blah, blah.
Sometimes it's just pure entertainment.
Yeah. And I should watch Marriage Story because I'm curious, but I kind of just saw it as like this very specific type of relationship. And you as a viewer are either going to like it or not, or, like feel like that's terrifying or not. And so I don't know. I kind of just, I like that they stay together because it is that specific dynamic that is so interesting, whether that's good or not that they're doing that. The feeling that but I don't know, it's what is the modern like feeling of that feeling, because
I don't think that there needs to be a modern version of that feeling, because I think that feeling isn't set in time. Like, I'm sure there are plenty of couples, marriages, whatever, where it's just they've been together for so long that they can't even conceive of a world where they're not together. And the idea of going back or trying to do something else or desperately trying to disentangle their lives is so intimidating that they'd just rather not. I
think that's such a real thing, that fear. So to see it, obviously, like the right thing to do would be to leave or like to divorce or something like that if you're unhappy. But I don't know. I think it's more interesting to explore someone who is entangled and their fears and how they project that and what they do and the mistakes they make in trying to avoid that. And maybe even, having the tragedy of deciding to not leave at the end. But maybe it's also like them coming to the realization too that it's, because then you're also like, is it a hardship? Is it like just being rocky in the relationship temporarily? Or is it like such a huge thing that is like,
or is it fundamentally not tenable or whatever?
Right. So it's always that, debate.
Well, let's take another step. When would you like to set this movie?
Oh, well, wow.
Because like when the movie came out, it was a contemporary movie.
Yeah.
If anything, it was it's a movie that spans 30 years.
Yeah.
And it just kind of like exists during all of those times that I believe that their older selves are in the present, and then they also look backwards in time because they like have the different cars from the different eras and times when they were there. Which really makes you think, if the movie took place in 1967, what was happening when they met 30 years ago and were in Europe.
Yeah, right. I know. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. That's, you don't, it's suspension. I actually always thought, because even dabbling in writing, I always thought it would be interesting to do something generational or along the same lines where it's like a family house or something. Like I have a family house in Canada, and me and my cousins used to go when we were kids all the time. And my great grandpa built it. And so it's just been passed through the generations. And now me and my cousins are adults and they have kids and they're bringing their kids there. And so the same idea of this one location cemented and having like the change be the visitation to that location.
So then, like, because kind of the constant in the movie is France. Mm-hmm. And you're suggesting it's hard to do 2 for the road when it's 2 for the home.
Yeah, right. But it's, it's still, I guess, away from home. So it's like on a vacation, or it's still a location. So, I mean, definitely the plot would change a lot, but there's still things that would happen around the vacation home, or just going to, it's still kind of one location. Like, yeah, they're traveling, but they hit kind of the same restaurants and hotels they go back to. And this would be the same habits, going to the beach, going to the ice cream parlor, stuff like that. But I just think it'd be interesting then, because then you could compare, because a lot of 2 for the Road 2, it is dated in the sense of like, it just shows the attitude of the time a little, or how it was starting to change in regards to viewing marriage and relationships and women in relationships. And so to even have it'd be like 2 for the Road, but taken just a little further. Like if Caroline actually got in a relationship herself.
Yeah.
And then, so
you
can
see her potentially making the same mistakes that the parents made.
Yeah, or for the better, you know, either way. But just seeing then the differences between the older generation and the next generation.
Or even more so, Caroline getting in a relationship and her parents seeing her relationship. She's been in a relationship with some guy or some gal or some non-binary person for X number of years. And the parents are looking at it and they're seeing a healthy relationship.
Because of time.
Yeah, and they're realizing that that's what a healthy relationship looks like. They've been so judgmental and been assuming that they were projecting themselves onto the other relationships around them and what they were seeing, and now all of a sudden they're actually getting to know this other relationship and realizing, oh, that's what a good relationship can be. Are we capable of that? If we're not, do we want to seek that out, or are we just going to have to decide to be comfortable with what we have?
Yeah,
that's cool. I like that idea. And if we're going to pick a city, I'm going to suggest Montreal.
Sure.
Because, like,
it seems French
enough.
European and
if we're going to be doing Canada stuff.
Well, no, I mean, that would
I think you and I both have Canadian dual citizenship, so hell yeah, let's get that tax credit.
I need to finalize that.
Oh, really? Yeah, fair enough.
The future, the near...
Yeah, a little bit. We'll see.
Yeah.
Time of recording.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so I think that's a really fun idea, and it's a different way to play with it, because I think we get to have dueling relationships.
Right.
That's really cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah, like I like what you said about them, because they did just compare themselves a lot in the movie. Like, now that you think about it, to the just random strangers they saw, and then
they were like, this is what it's like to be miserable. I guess that's where we're heading, and then they just allowed themselves to go be miserable.
Right. Or it's like the illusion. You think that you're different, but it's the fate of everyone in marriage. Yeah, almost in a way. Which is also projection one way or the other. Just like, well, everyone must be miserable, therefore it's okay that we're miserable. Yeah. And that simply isn't true. But then they do find a couple that is miserable, so it's like, okay, great. Right. They surround themselves with misery. Yeah, so maybe it's, them discovering their own projection through their daughter. Yeah. Which they were like projecting. Breaks the cycle. Yeah. I do like that. That's really good. Okay. So they're on vacation. Whose family home is it? Is it Joanna's or Mark's? Oh. Because it can't be both of them, because that's right. Gross. That is a different movie. That is in fact a different movie. Yeah. I don't know. Do you think one seems more obvious? I mean, the idea of a single person backpacking their way through a foreign country
often tends to be male.
Right. So it'd be if it was her family home and he's the one that comes across it or is just in the town, like on the beach kind of thing.
And even theoretically, like, her whole family can get sick and she doesn't. And it's like, well, my family's sick. I can't hang out with them for a week. So we may as well go off on our little adventure together. Mm-hmm. No one's going to mind. They're just going to be coughing and drinking soup this whole time.
Yeah. And so if they're kind of representing an older generation, it is more, I guess, stereotypical or something where it's kind of, like she's with her family and ventures away and he's like, on his own, the loner guy.
Yeah. Like he's doing a trip through Canada or something and like ends up going to Quebec City or the countryside in different areas because like Canada's gorgeous and there's also all these different places to go and film and see things that are beautiful and make you cry.
I know.
All right, so that's kind of our setup, but I even like the passport thing, but like it's not like he's going to need his passport going around Canada, so I feel like we can come up with some other little like cutesy thing that they do with each other because the passport thing kind of exists within the movie originally. That's true. And like if you're traveling around Europe, you need your passport because you're going through different countries, and that just simply isn't the case in Canada. Yeah. Yes, and especially at that time
to Canada, so like for getting home.
But during that time, was that true? Because there was a time when you didn't even need your passport to go into Canada.
That wasn't actually very long ago.
No, it wasn't. It was it stopped after 9/11, but that's about it. Yeah. But there was like 10, 20 years when it's just like, oh, we're going to Canada. Cool. Yeah. So like passport doesn't even work necessarily, but they somehow run into each other. There are a lot of different places in Montreal where people can run into each other. There's downtown Montreal, there's the poutine shops, the list goes on and on. What are you thinking? What's a fun meet cute that feels of its time but is still like possible, I guess.
Well, the movie seems like, it does have that European architect romantic vibes, so I do feel like something like if it was at a museum or some kind of show or something like a shared interest.
Another thing we could do is we could have them be, she and her family before they get sick are on a bus tour of the city, just exploring and doing all the different things, because there's bus tours of every single city in North America and probably most of Europe. And so all the rest of her family pair up in the different seats, but then she ends up sitting next to this guy, and it's just like, hey, cool. Yeah. And it's like, all right, well, that was fun. See ya.
It could be, instead of the passport, it could be like a camera or something. More personal belongings.
Yeah. I don't know how he would not know about a camera. I mean, I know. In a truly modern concept, it would be his phone, but we can't do that, and that's no fun. Right. I mean, if he's an architect, it could be a sketchbook. Yeah. He could just leave his sketchbook all over the place, and she's just always like, "Oh, it's gorgeous. Did you want to sketch? Oh, yes. I need to record this. I need to. Man, I really want to keep a track
just like
of
a tiny little flip book. Yeah.
And that's how, and something like that. And so, because if he's an architect, he's going and looking at all the different things, and they're just on family vacation. Family gets sick. They continue. They go off on their little tour. You can go to Niagara Falls. You can do all the different things. And they have their whirlwind week-long romance. Yeah. And then she doesn't go back to her family.
End of story.
End of story. Okay, so then what do you want to do for the middle section? Because now it feels like it's going to be them with some of her other cousins who are now also married, running around with their kids. And they're just sharing the cabin together. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like instead of it being an ex, I kind of like it being family or something, and they don't have kids yet, so then it'd be them kind of seeing all these other relationships around them that are even family that they don't like. Yeah. Or they're comparing themselves to, and they're like, well, either going to be better than that, or like, look at that.
I mean, theoretically, if we combine the Jackie and the Kathy characters into one person, it's this cousin who was flirting really hard, like turning around in her seat when they were on the bus, but then also gets sick. Yeah. But then years have gone, she's married to someone else, and it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. Almost. You guys had your thing. That's fine. I'm now very happy with checks, notes, Howard.
Yeah.
They have little Ruthie running around being an absolute monster.
Yes.
And then, so it feels like we're going to then have a fourth section. But so that makes sense. And then our next section is Caroline's been born.
Them having their own kid. And
once again, we're going to need them to be someplace other than the cabin, because if Joanna's going to hook up with someone else, really shouldn't be someone at the cabin unless it's like Jackie's husband.
Yeah. No, I don't. Yeah, I shouldn't get too
yeah.
Incestuous
is the word.
Yeah, that is the word.
Theoretically, she can hook up with one of her cousin's spouses, but that feels like it's crossing a different line.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because
presumably she wouldn't be envisioning a future with this person.
Right.
It would just be a hookup.
Right.
As opposed to with David, she potentially saw herself going off and being happy with this other guy and then realizing that she wasn't happy with this other guy. Mm-hmm. So it's going to have to be some sort of other bus tour.
Yeah, or, just at a beach or at some kind of event, just meeting him naturally. I mean,
they're in Montreal. They can go to a show. They can go to dinner afterwards.
Right.
And then Mark takes a phone call talking to Maurice and leaves Joanna alone at the table, where she just continually talks to David, and their dinner just keeps going. Mark never goes back to the dinner. They never leave. Mm-hmm. And it's this realization of, oh, I went home without her and I was so distracted in my own world, I didn't even realize that my wife never came home.
Yeah.
And then I find her the next day. She's clearly connected with this other guy, and I just never saw it coming. Mm-hmm. Yeah, some sort of like dinner out with friends. Like, hey, we're all in town. Let's all go.
Work, networking thing for him.
Yeah,
he's still architect, a opening for some.
I do think the word is architecturaling. The word you were going to say, absolutely.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, of course. He's architecturaling all over the place.
That's the word.
There's poutine. The list goes on and on.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And like, clearly, their relationship is falling apart, and they have this scare, and she certainly realizes that like just being with another person doesn't automatically make her happy again. Mm-hmm. So, oh no, may as well go back.
Yeah. Oh, it is. Yeah, it's not just another person. It's like, oh, I have to actually like this person.
Yeah. And like, I feel like Caroline's gonna be pretty young, but then if we're gonna be showing Caroline in a relationship, it's gonna have to be like 20 something years later.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden she's in a healthy relationship.
Yeah. Well, maybe the first with the kid, Caroline could be a little bit older than it is in the actual movie. So that it doesn't feel like a huge jump. She could be closer to like 8 to 10 or something, and has like a babysitter and they go out or something like that, Like Joanna can even be pregnant during the trip with the cousins. Or whatever.
Yeah. It's like, if you're pregnant, if this is, because like, it's even during the trip after they abandon Kathy and Howard that she's like, oh, by the way, I am pregnant.
Yeah.
And it's kind of this like, and he's like, oh, great. Okay.
Yeah.
And then they escape to this fancy hotel where they have to sneak in all of their food because they don't want to pay for the fancy dinner. And then they get to the end and realize, oh no, it was all inclusive.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then like they get to the end and all right, so they have this thing where they see their daughter in a healthy relationship, and they talk about how, like, they even make the jokes to her and whoever her partner is about, well, that's what marriage is going to be. You're going to have to do things that make you miserable. And they just like kind of look at each other and go, we're not going to do that. That's not what marriage has to be.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, cool, I guess.
Yeah.
So then we have the big question at the end of the movie is, do we stay together or do we break up? And do we even answer that question in this movie?
Right. Or like for, their daughter, does she even get married? Or is she, in a long relationship and she wants to end it, and that's like a insane thought to her parents, because then they're like, you've been in this relationship for 10 years.
That's
like
true too.
Like maybe the guy wants to get married and she's having second thoughts or turning it down, and they're like, that's like that's scary to them to think about for her, because it's like, you've set this up, you're almost 30, or it's like, what are you gonna do if you don't get married?
Which version do you prefer? What's our version?
I don't know. What helps them? I mean, if they're just kind of projecting the whole time, and they,
I guess it brings it back
realize
to
it themselves.
what do you want what do you want the takeaway from the movie to be? Of like, oh, well, that sucks. Or sometimes, yeah, you got to stick it out. Like,
I think the message is like it's your personal decision.
Yeah.
Like, because they're projecting on everyone else and saying that's not how it should be. We're going to be different. And then they're like, oh, I guess we're not different. But I think it is that everyone has a different relationship, and you can't just say, oh, like, because it's marriage, we have to stay together. It's like, it has to be okay to do what you need to do anytime you need to do it. And it's like not,
yeah,
which I think we're moving towards. And so I think that kind of decision from their kid as a more kind of progressive decision might change their attitudes more.
Yeah, and I like the idea,
but maybe we don't see what this decision they make, but maybe the truth, like, honest, they start having more self-awareness, or like you see the Joanna character like start to actually question it for real or something, or instead of lying and saying like, oh, well, this is just marriage.
Yeah, I mean, because I also like the idea of Caroline coming back, and like just the idea of a conscious uncoupling of like, well, fundamentally we had a long talk, and my partner and I realized that going forward we both kind of wanted different things, and so we decided to break up. Obviously we still love each other and all of that, but the futures that we're envisioning for ourselves are different, and so we're going to take different paths, and that's going to be that. And it's like, oh, you can do that?
Right.
But because I feel like at that point, then that's just projecting that the parents are then going to break up because they realize that you can.
Right.
I like the idea more that Caroline is in a healthy relationship where they communicate and talk and like build a life together that they want, because they're finding it internally as opposed to looking externally to see what other people are doing.
Yeah. And that still is kind of the message of like, it's your own thing to worry about and specific to you. And
then, because then we can end with leave the audience with, okay, Joanna and Mark are going to really look internally for the first time and figure out what they want in their relationship. And is it this? And
is it enough for them?
And then we can leave the movie on the question, which I feels like we're leading towards, of they looked to each other, they looked inside. Is this what they want? Well, I guess that's up to the audience projection.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And what does the audience think? And like have the audience do exactly what these two were doing the whole movie and make us all hypocrites. Perfect. Great. End of movie.
Yeah.
And that kind of feels like where it does need to end.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Are there any other pieces or like things that we're missing?
In terms of
plot, those sorts of like
just the
set pieces. Is there anything that you really liked in the first movie that you want to capture in this one that we haven't done yet?
Well, there was just a lot of good repetition. I thought the writing of all the different timelines was great, and like the car issues and the passport thing, like we talked about. But that's that you find kind of in so it'd be like the bus. It's just the repetition I loved through those. So I don't know if it's set pieces we specifically can even use
no, but I think the bus works because like the whole issue with them is that like we're doing this because it's what we know, it's the thing that we do, which is being married.
Yeah. Right.
And it's like, oh, the bus tour. We're going on this bus tour because it's the thing that we do. It's how we met. We always go on this bus tour. We know all the different sites. And you can literally have a moment where Caroline and the partner are like, no, we've been on the bus tour. We don't need to go that again. It's like, but we always go on the bus tour, and they're like, yeah, we know.
Yeah.
You have the bus tour memorized. We don't have to do it that way. And it's like, oh, okay, see you tonight. And then just like Joanna and Mark go on the bus tour while Caroline and her partner do their own thing, and it's like, okay. Yeah, I guess we do know this whole bus tour, but it's the thing that we do.
Right.
And we can have them doing that throughout.
Yeah, it's that repetition until Caroline finally comes in and kind of breaks that up of that repetition, and it is just kind of the...
And as always, it's the child's responsibility to fix the parents.
Real message.
Real message. Real and for true.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because we're telling our story linearly, but then in the editing, just chop it all up and make it cool and interesting and vibrant and sew it together and Frankenstein that shit. We're not going to do that because that involves a corkboard and note cards.
Yes.
So we'll just go into casting. We didn't actually talk about this ahead of time, but like fundamentally, the actors portraying Joanna and Mark are going to be portraying these characters at a variety of different ages. I kind of cast people in their, like, 40s-ish.
Oh, okay. I went young.
That's fine, because, like, either, like, because I was like, I didn't know if we were going to be, like, making them older, making them younger.
Right, and we are now kind of leaning more towards older, but...
I'd still cast people who look very young and could be made to look younger, but, like, I could be persuaded to go either way.
Yeah.
So we'll see who we have.
Yeah, for sure.
Tell me who you have for your Joanna.
Well, I mean, I think I was just really... I just kept thinking back to Challengers for some reason.
So you went with Zendaya?
Yeah.
Okay. Zendaya, I have a hard time imagining her looking older.
But I think she did a good job in Challengers, but definitely that's what I mean, not like 40s, 50s. I mean, yeah, Zendaya's good, I think, of being really young and then into like, could maybe push like mid 30s. So that's kind of, I was leaning on the younger spectrum to like adult for that time period. But I guess, like you're saying, I think I erred on the side of too young, whereas I think we need someone who is actually a bit older and can just play younger.
Yeah, I mean, because as it happens in the movie, Audrey Hepburn, Mark Wallace never look different.
Yeah, right.
Like, they definitely
don't
behave
really
at different ages. Like, I think I looked it up, and I think Audrey Hepburn is...
style.
Yeah, Audrey Hepburn's born in, like, 1928, and this movie came out in 1967, so I think she's 38.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so, like... But she doesn't look it.
Yeah.
Unlike a lot of people of that era, she doesn't age.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure she tried very hard to make so.
Right.
Like so many of us. But, yeah, okay. So I went with someone who really does a lot more producing now. And I don't see her acting as much, but I still see her as being... She still, to my eyes, looks pretty young. Like, I haven't seen her age all that much, but I think that she is... a very good actress, very fun, very charming, and I could see her kind of being a modern equivalent of Audrey Hepburn, and we've certainly seen her in a bad relationship that was bad and she needed to get out of it. And that's Rashida Jones.
Oh, yeah.
Because, like, Parks and Rec starts with her in a terrible relationship with the Chris Pratt character, and it's like, you shouldn't be dating this guy. It's like, you're right, I shouldn't be dating this guy. Anyway, I have a date with that guy.
Yeah.
And, yeah, that kind of, like, her vibe of kind of being the playful fun. I was kind of doing a 1-for-1. I was like trying to find like an equivalent Audrey Hepburn, and she seemed to fit.
Yeah.
And I felt like we could go younger and older with her. But
yeah, I think that's true. And then, I think maybe my age group feels more like the daughter.
Oh, that's true, because I did not cast a Caroline.
Yeah, me neither. But now I'm thinking
that's
if
good,
we're going
actually.
that route of like having the daughter play a more prominent role in the storyline, maybe it's kind of like Zendaya comes in and is Caroline.
I like that a lot, actually. Yeah. So let me tell you about my mark.
Okay.
I went real A-list for a lot of this cast, actually. But for my mark, I was like, we need someone who is a good actor, can have a real sense of humor, be really charming. And do you know where I'm going?
No, I just know how tough the role, because it's like, because it's such a dated movie. Like, he's an asshole guy.
He's an asshole guy,
but endearing in that.
I didn't necessarily want him to be an asshole guy, but like can certainly like be the. All right, well, I guess this is just the relationship we got, or whatever. And we've seen him be that guy. Like at the end of the day, we need someone who is fundamentally Knuff. I went with Ryan Gosling.
Oh my god!
And I think he's 4 or 5 years younger than.
That's But I think that actually would work really well. It's so funny because he's like The Notebook,
right? But that was how long ago?
Exactly. So you have that
years ago?
In your mind, and now he's played like more.
And even like some of his more recent movies, like when he's in Barbie, that's a toxic relationship that needs to end. Great. And like La La Land, isn't a great relationship that needed to end.
Right.
Fall Guy,
that
was a relationship that ended, and then they get back together, and you're like, really though? Like, I think he's really good at playing the guy who's like. Well, he is very dreamy. Yeah. But is that enough? Is that a good enough?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that.
And then he's also in Drive, I guess. So, and that fundamentally, like, kind of is his oeuvre at this point.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it feels like it kind of fits.
I think it does. I think that's spot on.
But if we're going with Zendaya for Caroline, who is Caroline's partner?
I had a bunch, actually, that I was thinking of. And I kind of went for, like, more interesting looking guys. I had kind of a list that could be that, or could be what's his name, David, the guy she has the affair with. I had originally written Paul Mescal just because he's more, but I think it was more just because he has that kind of tough guy look, but then he was in Ordinary People, and so he already has a lot of like relationship stuff, but he also is, he's just got a very like kind of super masculine curmudgeon-y vibe.
Sure. Which kind of fits for Mark.
Right, that's what I mean. I had in my list I had put it down for Mark, but I also had like I don't know how to pronounce it. Keir Gilchrist and Charlie Heaton from Charlie Heaton's from my turn to blank on things.
I'm looking up Keir Gilchrist right now, who is, and it's kind of a funny story. He's also in It Follows, Delete, Dead Silence. I've seen It's Kind of a Funny Story, but that movie came out a while ago. How old is this guy?
Everyone I found is it was like late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah, Keir Gilchrist is 32, but whatever. Zendaya is also late 20s, so like that's not unreasonable.
Yeah, she's like 28,
and
29.
Say the other name again?
Charlie Heaton. He, I thought, was more of the...
he looks younger.
He's 30.
I guess not much younger.
Stranger Things, that's what I was thinking of.
He's a Stranger Things kid?
Yeah, yeah.
I've never seen Stranger Things.
Oh, really?
No.
I've only seen the first.
Yeah, he's also in like New Mutants and stuff. Yeah.
He definitely has like the David vibe to me.
He's in an episode of Vera. My parents will be thrilled. Yeah, so then I guess up to you. Between Charlie Heaton and Keir Gilchrist, who do you think would be the healthy relationship with Zendaya person?
Oh, well, I don't know. I think
Keir
maybe
Gilchrist
more Paul
is an English-born Canadian actor.
Oh, well, that seems like a sign. I don't know, I think Paul Mescal, I kind of still like also, because he...
But we're not necessarily looking for a curmudgeonly person for Zendaya's partner.
But he's not.
He's
and
not.
That's what I mean. He kind of...
Okay.
And I almost kind of like that, because he maybe could come off that way, but then he's actually not. So then, you know...
So you think he's giving off the same vibes as the dad, but then when you actually get to know him, you're like
right,
no,
right.
thoughtful,
and
considerate.
And it's still more of that projection kind of thing happening. But yeah, he's in Normal People, and it's, that's kind of I haven't seen it all the way through, but like an exploration of a relationship,
Yeah, and he's 28.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. Great. Love it. I think all of those are great options, and I think making Zendaya and Paul Mescal the kids in a healthy relationship is perfect. I love that.
Yeah.
Great. So then let's talk about Kathy Manchester and then Howard Manchester.
Yeah.
So my Kathy, I wanted someone who could kind of be like a know-it-all. Like, I don't really want like the, oh my God, we're talking about these different things. And I'm like, that's no fun.
Yeah.
I just kind of wanted someone who's like a bit of a know-it-all, who would like, because again, we also potentially combined our Jackie and our Kathy. So I might just throw out Jackie altogether, but
yeah.
Whatever. Our person who flirts at the beginning and then is kind of the like, well, of course we're in a healthy relationship. I'm miserable, but that's what being in a healthy relationship is.
Yeah.
And I've really only seen her in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but I decided to go with Melissa Fumero. I think her name is Amy in Brooklyn Nine-Nine. She's not Stephanie Beatrice.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
And I didn't know this, but apparently before Brooklyn Nine-Nine, she was on One Life to Live for a long time.
Huh. Yeah, I could totally see that.
Yeah.
I don't know her, like, characters that she plays very much, but I mean, I could totally see it.
Yeah. But yeah, that's who I had in mind for Kathy. Who did you have for Kathy?
I still went young.
I think that's fine.
And I was thinking a little more quirky than directly that character. Just
Great.
Kind of, because to me, they were just annoying in their own way. And so I wasn't thinking of it as like finding someone who was that specific type of character, just someone who can be very quirky or specifically funny in their own way. So I had, at least for Howard, I thought of Sam Richardson.
Oh, that's not who I was asking you about. But...
Oh, I know. But then for Kathy, I had like Rachel Sennett or Maya Hawke.
Who would you prefer between those two?
I know Maya Hawke better, I think. But I think it would have to be the couple together, because I don't know if I could imagine like Maya Hawke and Sam Richardson. And that's why I said him first, because
Yeah, those are two very different vibes and two very different ages.
I know.
Sam Richardson's like, what, in his 40s?
Yeah.
And Maya Hawke is 26.
And that's, like, I really was just thinking of him for the guy, so that's why it was just tough, because I was like, you know, who would be... But then even, what's her name? Maya Rudolph would be a funny... Like, they'd be a funny couple.
Yeah.
Of just kind of like, just an odd... You know, like it's like a couple that you wouldn't necessarily agree with.
Yeah, like I definitely went with a little bit more of an of someone who's capable of playing an oddball for Howard. Like, we all first met him playing an oddball, but now, like, if you watch Mythic Quest, he's like kind of playing the asshole. Oh. And like the asshole with, does he have a heart of gold? Hard to tell. But I went with Danny Pudi. So he's Abed from Community.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He's played a bunch of other characters too, and like he had a voice on DuckTales, and like I think of him as Mythic Quest, I think of him as Community, and I think of him in that interview with Larry King, where Larry King's asking him what his luxuries are, and he says, "Oh, really good socks or a good cup of coffee," and Larry David's like, "Those aren't luxuries. What about yachts and private planes?" And Danny Pudi just looks at him and goes, "Larry." Larry King, and he just looks at him and goes, "Larry, I'm on DuckTales." And it's just this perfect encapsulation of just this like disconnect and just the olds just having no idea, and it's perfect. I love that clip so much. But
that's
like,
so funny. Yeah, I mean, definitely.
But so like, if you're gonna pick two and pair them up,
right,
probably no on Maya Hawke.
Yeah, no, yeah. But I definitely went much younger.
But like, pick two. Like of. Who did you have? Of like Melissa Fumero, Sam Richardson, Danny Pudi. Who are the two that you would put together for this pairing?
Well, I don't know if those would pair with Sam Richardson. So Danny and Melissa seem like a good pairing.
Who was someone else you had for Kathy?
Maybe Danny and Rachel Sennett. I just am not as familiar with her work.
I've really only seen Bottoms. She's very funny.
Yeah. I feel like I've seen clips and stuff.
She's a very particular vibe. So I saw Bottoms at the WGA, and there was a talk back with her and her co-writer, who was also the director afterwards, Emma Seligman. And Rachel Sennett wasn't expected to be there, but she was there. And so, like, at the end, they go up on stage, and Emma Seligman just kind of walks up on stage, and Rachel Sennett is in, like, a mini skirt and, like, super high heels. And she's just doing the tiny little mini walk down the stage as slowly as possible. And then they're both very funny and very charming. But, I'm perfectly happy to go with Rachel Sennett and whomever you think the dude should be.
I mean, I'm just not as familiar with her comedy. So...
she will bring a different tone to this, which is kind of who we want for that character regardless.
Yeah. So if she's a little younger than Danny, but...
Well, then she's definitely younger than Sam Richardson. I mean, she's 29.
Yeah, and Danny's 45.
Is he?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Well, then we probably shouldn't necessarily... I mean, how old is Maya Rudolph?
She's so young. She looks older. She's like 24,
Maya
26.
Rudolph is not 26.
Sorry, no, I'm thinking Maya Hawke. Sorry. Maya
Hawke is 26.
Yeah. Maya Rudolph's, I think, in her 40s.
She was born in 1972. She's 52.
52, okay.
This is a tough pairing.
I know, it is. Well, it's just such a unique comedy couple.
Let's go with Melissa Fumero and Sam Richardson.
Okay.
And then for Ruthie, I wrote some really good actress that casting finds.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not...
Yeah,
she's
we don't
5. I'm not going to go searching for 4-year-olds or something, because I would need to find a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, it'd be the annoying little kid.
Yeah, so then I have Maurice, I have David, then I have Jackie.
Okay.
Am I missing anyone that I should have?
I don't think so. I don't have anyone for Maurice or Jackie, but I think we kind of combined.
We're kind of throwing away. So
but I can think on.
I'm so sorry, Margaret Qualley from the Substance, Drive-Away Dolls, and Kinds of Kindness. This is a character that doesn't exist in this movie anymore.
Yeah,
like fundamentally, our version, so she's not in the movie anymore. I'm sure Margaret Qualley's great, but so let's talk about Maurice, who you don't have, and then. Because we'll just go with who I have, which is Tony Shalhoub.
Oh, I mean, I've been watching Monk obsessively for the last few months. Very happy with that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then let's talk about David. So my David, I was like, someone who's dreamy, who's different than Mark, who'd be fun and could then potentially play, like, you look at him and you go, oh, okay, this will be fun and interesting, and then you just find out that he's just boring.
Yeah, right.
Which I don't think this actor is. I think he's great. He's also in Barbie. I also recently saw him in Jackpot, but everyone really knows him as Shang-Chi. I went with Simu Liu, Marvel movie.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And A, I think he needs more work, but B, I don't know, I just think he's good. But I'm more than happy to go with whoever you have for David.
No, yeah, I think that's another one where it is kind of like someone less, like, not a name is good, because it should be more, or not a name, but someone who is like, it can be more of like, ooh, it's exciting,
Yeah.
I had the ones I mentioned before, and then Lucien Laviscount from Emily in Paris.
I mean, that does fit. Simu Liu, by the way, also Canadian. Say this guy's name again.
Lucien. I'm so bad at saying names and remembering names.
Apparently he's in something called The Bye Bye Man.
Yeah, I think he's known for Emily in Paris.
Yeah, I'm happy to go with this guy.
And he's like British.
And not just because his birthday is 3 days after my birthday.
Oh,
and
biased.
Then also 3 years, or 4 years. But the important thing is that it's close.
Yeah. But he just seems like very...
Yeah, great.
Sweet, charming, and then, and then you're like, oh, bummer. It's not, there's nothing there.
Done. Lucien Laviscount. That's fun.
Yeah.
And then that brings us to writer-director. I have a hyphenate for this one. Do you have separate writer-director, or do you also have a hyphenate?
I just have director, but I think actually it's a writer-director.
Okay, so we both have hyphenates. That's interesting. Okay. Yeah. Would you like to go first, or would you like me?
You can go first.
So this guy recently had a job, I think, directing the movie Brothers, which is cool, but I really know him, and why this particular guy will always kind of be held up in high regard in my head is because he is the writer and director of the movie Palm Springs.
Oh, yeah.
And if you want a movie that plays with time and is interesting and compelling and jumps around and tells an interesting and compelling love story, I think he both can play with reality and tell a compelling love story because he's done that before. And this is just different enough that I feel like it's something he'd be interested in, that I was like, Max Barbacow, I think, would be a really good option.
Yeah, definitely. I think that I liked Palm Springs a lot.
Yeah, it's a beautiful movie. If you're listening and you haven't seen Palm Springs, it is worth your time.
Yeah, for sure. That would be, such an interesting tone, too, for it.
It doesn't necessarily have to have the same tone.
No, however. Yeah, but just that brain.
Yeah, so who did you have? Who's your hyphenate?
I went more classic, and I was wrong. It's not a hyphenate. It's just because I think it's... for the director, I went with Luca Guadagnino, the Challengers, Call Me By Your Name.
Got it.
Because it's like, that Challengers was also played with timeline, and I thought really well, and Call Me By Your Name, I don't know, I think James Ivory was the writer of the screenplay.
I believe you. For Challengers?
No, for Call Me By Your Name.
Oh, yeah, I'm so sorry. Call Me By Your Name, yes, James Ivory and Andre Ackerman.
Yeah, he wrote the novel. I don't know, I just thought that kind of tone would be fitting for it, but I don't know now with the kind of more meta-ish zone we're entering with this, with adding in the daughter and kind of like changing that, but I just thought like Call Me By Your Name was just kind of a nice, similarly European romance.
Okay.
That was...
We can certainly do Max Barbacow to write and then Luca Guadagnino to direct, if you like.
Yeah, or James Ivory to write and Max to direct. I don't know. Do you feel like he's a stronger writer or director, or do you think it's kind of like a hyphenate thing for...
I do not know.
Max.
It's hard to say because Palm Springs was like his thing.
Yeah.
For Brothers, he just directed it. It was written by Ethan Cohen and Macon Blair with Josh Brolin and Peter Dinklage. So he seems to be doing directing, but I'm up to you. What do you think we should do?
I kind of feel like I maybe like the opposite, like Ivory for
great
writing and Max to direct as kind of...
It's James Ivory?
Yeah, so he's kind of like more of a classic writer, and then to have a younger, fresh director paired with that.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
Cool. That's fun. All right, great. So, that is 2 for the road. Joanna is going to be played by Rashida Jones. Mark Wallace will be Ryan Gosling. Caroline, once she's an adult, will be Zendaya. And Zendaya's partner, who probably has a name, will be Paul Mescal. Kathy Manchester will be Melissa Fumero. Howard Manchester will be Sam Richardson. Ruthie will be some kid we find. Maurice will be Tony Shalhoub. David will be Lucien Leviscont. All of this will be written by James Ivory and then directed by Max Barbacow. That is Two for the Road. Corsica, you going to go see this movie?
Yeah, definitely.
Nice. So yeah, we made it to the end. Thank you, A, for introducing me to this movie, and B, being my guest today.
Yeah, thank you.
What, would you like people to follow socials, or is there anything else you'd like them to do or watch or whatever?
No. I mean, go watch more silent film.
Any shorts you've made that you want them to try and track down?
Not as of right now. I still have a short in the festivals, so I might release it online, but no, for now, I'm still kind of writing and developing stuff, so just... Great. Keep an eye out down the line.
So keep an ey out for Corsica Wilson, coming soon.
Yeah.
I realize I didn't say your full name over the course of this episode, but whatever.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But okay, great. Dope. If anyone's interested in following me on social media, I'm at Sam Gasch, SamGasch on BlueSky. Or you can follow me / the podcast on Instagram at Ideal Remake, which is spelled like the podcast you're looking at. But yeah, we will end this episode the same way we end every episode. Corsica, what is your favorite quote from the movie Two for the Road?
I have two.
Great, go for it.
When she goes, she has the chicken pox. And then hamburger pills. When she's just like, I don't know why they called them that.
Oh, I have your pills. And they're hamburger pills.
Yeah, that's the way she...
That was so weird. She's said she's pregnant and she's so hungry, and he's like, you got to be careful not to overeat when you're pregnant. And it's like, sir, the opposite of that. What are you talking about?
Oh no, this is the movie where she goes, and what does she say? And there's something, she says like, there's something else in the wash or something besides. She does. Do you remember that when they're like outside the hotel?
No, I don't. But I believe you, and I'm sure it's very charming in a very Audrey Hepburn way.
She does it, obviously in her way. That's not
Audrey Hepburn is incredibly charming this whole movie. It's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, you did it.
Yay!
Two for the Road.
Woo!